Welcome to Moving Iron with Casey Seymour and Greg Peterson, the podcast for anyone and everyone involved and interested in the business of ag equipment. If you want to understand what trends and market forces are impacting the price of your iron, you've come to the right place. Buckle up, it's time to move some iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This is the Moving Iron Podcast. It's brought to you by John Deere. I've got Greg Machinery, Pete Peterson on to talk about what's happening in the market. Greg, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, Casey. How about you?
Doing good, man. Doing real good. It's a nice week here. We've had a nice week of fall. It's not too bad, not too cold, a little windy, but it's always windy out here, so you can't really complain about that too much.
It's nice when we don't go right from summer into winter, so that's
nice
to have a little fall weather.
Yeah, it's been nice to have that bit of a transitionary period that'll gives it that little bit of grace between blazing heat to the great white tundra of what the northern states allow.
The snow is coming eventually.
It always comes, doesn't it? Always comes. Well, Greg, there's been a few things going on. You've seen a couple auctions this week that you've watched. Talk a little bit about what you've seen so far this week.
Yeah, as we're recording this yesterday, Tuesday, I was in Williamsburg, Iowa. We were filming for Machinery Pete TV show, John and Marcia Kinzenbaugh auction by Sullivan Auctioneers and Big Iron. It was really an interesting sale. It was kind of two parts. On the one hand, they had about a dozen late model blue Kinsey items. It said farm retirement, but I was talking to John at the auction yesterday, and I don't know if it was technically a retirement. It was a local Kinsey dealer that had, I think, guy kind of retired, and he had a bunch of late model stuff just in on trade that I think the company took back and was trying to sell. So a couple highlights there. They had a planter, a 22 model Kinsey 3660, 1631, 1,085 acres on it. I think that did 173 and a quarter. And then they had four 24 model Kinsey 1421 grain carts on tracks. So always interesting when you're trying to sell, more than two of something that late model and big. But they did all right. They went from 135 and a quarter down to 116, 750. A couple mock tills. They had a Kinsey 22 foot or a 22 model 301 mock till 30 foot. That went for 93 and a quarter. And then a little smaller one, a 22 model Kinsey mock till 201 20 foot. That went for, I think, 67 and a quarter on that one. And then curious to get your reaction on these, Casey. On the collector side of the auction, I think people are going to be buzzing for a while about the John's 1969 Massey 1130 narrow front. Looked like new. 4,220 hours. That went for $50,250. Previous high I had ever seen was just set back in August at $29,000 on Danny Kuhn's collector auction with Kuhn's equipment out of Arthur, Illinois. He had an 1130 that Kerr auction sold for $29,000. So John's going over 50. It was amazing. And right with that, he had four 540-20s. One of them was a 71 model, hydraulic front wheel drive, so kind of unusual. He had purchased it on Sullivan's auction back in like 2017 for a big collector. When he got it home, John happened to have some old Firestone combine tires. And John's a pretty innovative guy. He just thought, I think this thing might look pretty good with those shoes on it. So, oh my God, the interest in this thing. It sold for $50,250. I think that's the sixth highest auction price I've ever seen on a 40-20. So it was quite a day in Williamsburg yesterday.
Was that the one you had on the picture in that newsletter you sent out yesterday, in the newsletter you sent out?
Yeah, we had it on Facebook, and we did some preview videos on it. You could tell a couple weeks out there was insane interest in this sale. Of course, John, it's hard to quantify the John Kinzenbaugh premium you're going to get because, people have, selectively been through his collection over the years, and he's got 4 or 5 buildings there on site, multi-levels with tractors. It's unbelievable. That's why I wanted to go down for the TV show, just to kind of, get John in voice talking about his career on the business side, but then also the collector side. So yeah, that 40-20 with the huge Firestone combine tires was, John was funny. He goes, kind of wish I had a few more of those sets of tires laying around. I'd throw them on some other 1970 model tractors and double the price on them. So it was a fun day yesterday.
Yeah, the collector stuff's always fun to watch at sale. It's kind of like watching the Barrett Jackson auction or something like that when you watch some of those really unique classic cars come through that are really, really vintage, where all the serial numbers match and all that stuff like that. And they bring a couple $100,000 or something like that as they roll through there.
Yeah.
and you can tell who wants to have those
Mm-hmm.
in their collection, and then whether you're watching like This Sell Here or like Meekum Gone Farming or whatever that's what it's called, isn't it? Meekum Gone Farming or something like that.
Yep.
When they have those shows come on like that, and they kind of see that, you can really tell who's they came to buy that machine, when they got there, right? And that's the whole thing.
Interesting piece that I found with these vintage. Well, one, I date myself calling 1970s model tractors vintage. That means I'm vintage, which I am. But it's fun to write and talk about. But also from a straight business perspective, keeping tabs on the ag market, I find it interesting to see how aggressive or not aggressive the bids are on these type of tractors, because to me it speaks to how strong are balance sheets out there, how are farmers feeling. And so, of course, a little better news here of late, but still a lot of stress, for quite a while here. But honestly, Casey, I've seen these kind of late 60 to 1970 up into the early 80s models, really nice ones. When they show up, they're actually going up in value. As that Massey indicated, we've seen the record. It was 21,000 before August, then it went to 29. Now it's over 50. So there's still a lot of strong balance sheets out there. A lot of pressure in ag, but that strength of balance sheet, I think, it's important to monitor that. And I find land prices and these vintage collector tractors kind of the two best ways to monitor the strength of balance sheet and how people are feeling. Because if, that's the beauty of an auction. That Massey 1130, that would have been high at 30,000, but it went for 50. And that probably wasn't two guys. That was probably 3 or 4 or 5 tangling. And that just shows there's money out there and people are willing to spend it.
Yeah. I always take a look at that too. Now I'm looking at it from the perspective of what that kind of stuff brings. A lot of that stuff's a one-off situation, and what are the odds of having that particular 1130 come back through an auction that looks that good, and has everything is still original and all the stuff about it. I like to look at the age of which the people that are buying it, right, and who they are, because like my dad, he'd go buy something. I used to have one of these when I was a kid, right, and he goes out and spends an absorbent amount of money on something, and I'm like, okay,
what are you thinking, Dad?
Right, and at the same time, but disposable income and those kind of things all come into play there. So I think one thing I've paid close attention to over the years is when the next generation of farms coming in, and I pay close attention to what they're buying, right, and what that looks like, because there's a lot of guys that I've ran across throughout the years there's a 4020 or an old Steiger tractor or something like that they grew up on, and they're late 20s, early 30s type of things, in their 40s or whatever. They would like to get that back again because that's the tractor they grew up on. They learned how to drive and blah, 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 and that kind of thing. There's that romanticness to it. And when I see that generation buying that kind of stuff, that's when I'm kind of like you. I'm like, there's money out there to be spent. And I think that's we're kind of there. I mean, the older generation is going to buy stuff like they want to because they have more disposable income than the younger generation does. But when I watch the younger generation buy that kind of stuff, it kind of perks my interest up a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Last 2 days, as I was hanging out there, I got to visit with Gary Roberts. He's kind of John's right-hand man there, manages his 4 or 5, basically his museum, his facilities there. And Gary was telling me they had a Farmall 300 on the auction. And they had a couple open houses with huge turnouts the last 2 weeks. And at one of them, Gary was remembering one of the tours they did a year or so ago. And a guy got looking at that Farmall 300. He goes, it was on the second level. He goes, can I get a closer look at that? Guy goes up there and he finds out the serial number. And then there was an oil can set up on the back of it. And the guy goes, that was my dad's. Now that guy that brought that up to Gary a year or two ago on the tour, he passed away. So Gary's remembering this with this tractor on the auction now. And he remembers the guy telling him his son works in ag. I don't know if it's Monsanto or one of the seed companies, whatever. So Gary, as busy as he is, finds an obit in a Google search with the guy's last name, and he's remembering, well, I think he said he was from so-and-so. So anyway, he finds the guy's wife had passed. In the obit, it mentions the son. He goes on to Facebook, got a very common name, and, there's a lot of Chris Larsons or Greg Petersons or whatever. He finds the young guy and messages him and goes, hey, FYI, I'm Gary Roberts with Kinsey, and we're having an auction, and your grandpa's 300 is on the auction. And as Gary was telling me the story, now he's got tears coming down his face and he's just choked up again because of this, the family connections with these things. So on the one hand, whatever, I hope the young guy got it. And when it comes, now I could do my machine repeat thing and say, well, if Farmall 300 is worth, whatever, average, I've seen a zillion of them. But you know what? There's just one that was his grandpa's with that oil can on the back. And whatever you got to spend to get that, within reason, spend it. But you're right. Guys get up into your mid 40s, 50s. Hopefully you have some more disposable income. And then it's like, I always write about my machine repeat rule of 12, whatever your favorite tractor was for whatever reason when you were a kid. If you rode along with your grandpa, whatever, if you can find it or get one like it, if that makes you happy, you can't put a price tag on that.
Yep. Well, that's funny you bring that story because it made me remember. I used to have this old 1978, I think, blue Chevy pickup, right? And it was nothing fancy about it. It was 4-wheel drive, 4-speed on the floor, and I bought it because I had a big block Pontiac 400 in it, and I was like, "That's cool." How much cooler could you get, right? And so I bought it, and beat around in it. And a friend of a friend one day, I was out seeing a buddy of mine, and a friend of a friend type of thing. He happened to be there, and he started looking his truck over, and he's like, "That's my dad's truck. My dad just passed away, 3 years ago." And I said, "Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that." And he goes, "If you ever sell it, give me the first right of refusal." I'm like, "Absolutely." Get ready to sell it. Call him up. I said, "Here you go. I'll sell it to you for this amount of money." And he bought it. But that truck meant a lot more to him than it would ever mean to me, because it was, it was cool. It was awesome. And it was a fun thing to dink around on, but a lot of memories tied up into those, into that kind of stuff.
It was interesting yesterday, John. If you know John Kinzenbaugh, he's a great guy. He's very humble. Bounced into him at auctions for 30 years on collector sales, and always fun to visit with John, and kind of a true American success story. He just started on his own, and look what he built. But as I was talking to him for the TV show yesterday, I was like, "John, you were busy with Kinsey. And your family and your farm. What got you into this collecting to the extent where you've got over 650 tractors in these 5 sheds behind us?" And he wasn't really emotional, but he said, "Well, Greg, these tractors, they tend to go up in value." So he rattled off a few, and I remembered. Now, of course, John purchased the famous 1982 4440 on a Sullivan auction in March 6th of 09 in Hamilton, Illinois. It had 47 hours on it. John bought it for $58,000, and he didn't sell that yesterday. He has that one at the Innovation Center.
That was a bit of a steal for $58,000.
Well, right. That's the thing. See, that was 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And I got laughing. I said, "John."
Even back then, that was a steal.
Well, it kind of was. Now, that was March of 09, so, decent time in ag. Mm-hmm. But what John was telling me yesterday was these, and, that we were sitting like 20 feet from that Massey 1130. Now, whatever, he didn't pay near $50,000 for it. And they don't all do that.
Right.
But John's a smart guy, and if he was going to sell that 4440 today that he paid $58,000, it'd probably bring $200,000 with 47 hours on it. Probably more than that.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of interesting business applications. You and I have probably talked. When you start going down this rabbit hole, one of the most vivid examples I have is my friend in New York, Kevin Sykes, Willow Run Farms. When he was growing up out in New York, he heard all his dad and the old boys talking about the 2-cylinders and the 20s going up in value back in the day. And he was in his 20s, and he said, "Well, that makes sense to me. That's like a good investment." So he knew at the time the fees had a great reputation. So he wanted to find the nicest lowest hour one he could. Now, the internet was just a baby then. So back then, DTN had a system for dealers that were connected back in the early 90s. And he got his local John Deere dealer working the DTN system. And they go, "Hey, we found one in Michigan with 3 hours on it." Like it was a 92 model. It was a doctor that had it, bought it. He had a couple little kids. He just didn't have time to use it. Wanted to sell it. So Kevin bought it. I'm trying to remember. I think he paid mid 50s or high 50s for it. Took it to New York, put it in the shed. Now, when he was a young farmer, that was a ton of money. It was kind of risky. 20 some years later, he listed it for sale, and immediately was inundated. I'm trying to remember what he listed it for. This was like 2012. I want to say 150-ish, something like that, 140, and it sold instantly. Now, again, if he had that today with 3 hours, again, that's over $200K. So, in effect, his theory, he proved it correct. He put his money where his mouth was and he bought it, he held it. Now, people can argue and say, well, rate of inflation, and hey, that's a valid argument. I always sort of look at it like, what if you just put your money in the bank at the current CD rates, now about 4%, and that goes up and down over the years. But yeah, I mean, I guess the nostalgia factor plus the price of new just keeps going sky high, up, 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 up. So it just makes people go, man, if I could find the nice 10, 20, 30-year-old, whatever, and it just makes them super valuable. So it's been fun to track over the years.
Yeah, that old stuff. It's in a unique bucket by itself, and they have there's a lot more nostalgia value there than there is perceived value, because just like you said, I remember when we look at stuff like that, it would come in. I never looked at a 3-hour 4450, but we'd see stuff come in. We'd have like a 7820 roll through. At the time, it would have been a 10 or 12-year-old tractor at the time, and I had like 560 hours on it or something like that.
Yep.
And to me, I didn't like trading for those machines. And the simple fact for it was, the guy trading it could always get more money for it than I would have been ever got out of it at the lot. And the reason for that was, you put it on an auction, and that same thing, two people start fighting over that. And my, at the time, $128,000 or whatever I thought it was worth at the time, it'd sell for 156 or 137.5 or 142 or something like that. My conversation was like, I am not that's full retail value. That's not trade value, because most people associate a trade value with an auction value, right? So I'm not putting $137,000 into this tractor. It's not going to happen, right? So we're going to go through that process. But my thing with that was always, Mr. Customer, it is way better for you to take this machine and list it on an auction and let the auctioneer be the hype man for it, because that is a good anchor piece for that upcoming auction. Here's this 7820 with 560 hours on it. At the time, it would have been pre-def, and as we started rolling into, at that particular time, it would have been not interim tier 4 engines, so you had some of that. You didn't have to use, depending on your brand, decent particulate fluid or not. But as you're working your way through that, I would just
hear you from as a dealer. Yeah, you were thinking of your customer, advising him wisely to sell it a different route for maximum dollars. I am intrigued. Some dealers I've seen have taken kind of a different tack on, almost like an opportunistic, in a good way, sense. So if you did take that item in on trade, but not with the mindset of selling it right away, using it almost like as a beacon, frankly, put it in your showroom right inside the front door. That's what Eddie Seidenstricker down in Missouri, of course, his dad was way back in the business. Eddie's a legend. But I think the story is, he found, I don't know if it was one of the first 4020s his dad sold or one they used to own, and bought it back and fixed it up, and it sits right in the showroom. I think it's Mexico, Missouri. And when people go in, it's just a freaking magnet. You go stand by this, this 4020 looks like new. It's like a time machine in the front of your dealership. And it's also, in a way, I've seen some dealers do this where they'll reserve a spot and they'll have a tractor of the month. And it can be a pain in the butt. Dealers are awful busy, but wow, what a powerful thing to do to honor your customers, and a lifetime honor for that farmer customer, longtime 2-3 generation customer of your dealership, to see his John Deere B or his Farmall 560 in your front, right in the front door of your dealership. And you're just saying, wow, thank you for your decades of business, Frank. And again, people stop in and they tell their buddies, and in terms of getting foot traffic into a dealership, now not everyone's going to come in and buy a late model combine or tractor, but you never know if you might move a chisel plow or something, or make a connection with someone.
Yep.
And I think farmers, even though they wouldn't say it, they would, and dealers do the same with calendars you put out. Like AHW does an awesome job, and they'll do a customer calendar, favorite collector tractors and some modern ones. It's just really good business practice there, I think, to honor your farmer customers that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've seen that happen a couple of times throughout dealerships, where it was the first, maybe in the first tractor they sold at that dealership way back when, or I've seen it even too, where they'll have a mini museum of sorts, where they'll have, this is Ted's whatever, and they'll have 3 or 4 different things in there. I've seen some. There was one dealership I went to a long time ago. I don't remember where it was at now. They had an old John Deere 55 combine that was something like the first combine they sold, and it looked great too. I mean, they'd gone back through and restored it, and they pulled it out during the parade season, and pull it in every other parade and do all that kind of stuff. So there is some cool nostalgia to that.
It's interesting from the dealer side or the farmer side. On the one hand, these equipment items, tractors and combine, they're just assets. We don't have to get emotional about them. A lot of farmers don't. My dad as a dealer never did. He never looked at them like that. I myself, I was not a dealer, but I've spent a career kind of listening to people and telling stories about that emotional connection. It's not right or wrong that some people, feel that way about older vintage tractors. And I guess that's just what makes life interesting, right? We all kind of roll through on our own paths and view things differently. But nostalgia to me is, it's an incredibly powerful force. It's very delicate from a business standpoint, how you choose to employ it. You don't want to overdo it. But when done right, oh my goodness, it's just exceedingly powerful. Like, I'm interested when companies, it might be like Pepsi or Coke or whatever, I don't know, or Ford, just bring back, or like Ford bringing back the Bronco, a different look to it, throwback. I think that's really good business when done right. And I think more
bring back the Bronco too, and then you really got something.
More companies should look into that. And it's great they're all looking forward, smashing forward ahead. But how many times, Casey, have you heard over the years people say, man, if they could just build a new 4020 or a new 4960 or a new Magnum 71, I'd buy that thing. And everyone understands that you can't. I mean, engineering challenges and government regulations, but that's just people saying they love that model and it means something to them.
Yeah. I think if you look at some of these, like the Bronco, it looks like an early era Bronco, slightly different, right? I mean, it resembles it, right? It's like Camaro resembles a 67, 68, 69 Camaro type of thing, kind of resembles that body style. The Boomer tractor for a while, they had kind of brought back the 8N kind of look, 9N kind of look for a minute, on some of those things. You see some of that stuff pop up, and it does draw some nostalgia back into it. But when I first started doing this, it was very common for me to have a conversation with a guy where, hey, my dad's got a X tractor to trade in, I've got a Y tractor to trade in, and then we're going to look at update mom's tractor. Every one of those tractors now they had more than just those 3 tractors on the farm, but those 3 tractors had a special place in all their hearts for whatever it was that they were doing. You don't hear that anymore. You don't hear that. This is my dad's plant tractor. This is my mom's haying tractor, or whatever. You don't hear that anymore. And you might hear it slightly, but that generation also has aged to the point where they're not out working in the farm every day.
Yeah,
the next generation is coming in, and this next generation, not that the previous generation didn't have this thought process, but it's still, farming still a lifestyle, and that's still part of being in farming and ranching is the lifestyle that comes along with it. But they're really looking at that tractor the same way they look at a bag of seed or fertilizer. It's an input to make my crop or input to grow my cow or whatever it is that I'm doing. And that nostalgic feel to that piece of equipment as a my tractor thing is not the same as it used to be.
Well, that's interesting. A couple of years ago at Louisville, when I was speaking down there, we had a room full of folks, and I asked the question. I said, do you think young people today, 10, 12, 15 years old, are going to feel the way you guys, most of the people in the audience from my age or older, that you guys feel about a Magnum or a 4440? And 95% went nope. And I was up on stage going, nope, you're wrong. I think they will. And it's human, I think. It'll be interesting to see. So now, for example, social media is so prevalent, and I see these videos of parents with their kids in the combine cab with them, like sleeping. So that kid is in that cab with mom or dad or grandpa. Now, the machine is a $600,000, $700,000, whatever, $400,000, $300,000. That piece of them is always going to be there. That's the thing. I've watched for 35 years. I would have asked that question 20 years ago, and it would have been the same. No, it'll just these 2 cylinders, these 4020s. After that, it's all different. Well, look what a nice 4960. I was in Kentucky a couple of years ago, and one brought 145,000 bucks.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. I just kind of think the human level, and we do have the perfect test for it, Casey. When Deere came out with their 9620 RXs, a farmer in Illinois bought the first two, dropped down 1.2 million, and he bought them to put in his shed. Now he's testing the theory of young Kevin out in New York 30 years ago. Now, will it work with a 9620R? I don't know. I totally hear what you're saying. Just mechanically, will those tractors hold up 40 years? Well, will all the computerization? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of some of it too, where you think about the idea behind what someday, Greg, when you're a lot older and I'm a lot older, we'll talk about this, and it'll be, here we're seeing a 50-year-old, 8R 370 roll across the auction block that's got a few hundred hours on it. That somebody did the same thing. They kept it from wherever and didn't do anything with it, and next thing you know, but by then it's that might be a $600,000 or $700,000 tractor roll back across there, and it's the same thing. Like look at the 4020. A 4020 brand new was $37,000 or something like that when it came out, brand new.
Right.
So it's bringing about half again as much as it did when it was new. Does that mean that 50-year-old 8R is going to be a $750,000 8R or a $800,000 8R when it rolls back across?
It's a very expensive experiment, isn't it?
Does that roll hold up?
There is that truth, though. I think of our friends at Martin Tractor in Illinois, and I think Ben, I was talking to him, and I forget whether it was Ben's grandpa, but I heard the story that when the 4020s came out, or that vintage, so what, mid-60s or whatever, and people were transitioning off the two cylinders, that as the 4020s came out, what I think Ben's grandpa did there was he just went around to buy every two-cylinder tractor he could get his hands on, like every freaking one. So I'm going to buy them up, build another shed, build 2 more, 3 more, 4 more sheds, because everyone was transitioning. So at the time, a 730 was maybe 8, 10, 12 years old, 15 or whatever. And he bought them and held them. And then you get into this wave of, okay, the new stuff, oh my gosh, I can't believe what a 4430 costs. That's unbelievable. It can't go any higher. Boy, if I could find a nice 830, it's just kind of universal. It's always been that way. We're seeing it right now. People, we talk about that magic, whether it's 150K or whatever, you stay under it, 15, 20-year-old tractor, people write big checks. It's just that the numbers are getting bigger as we get older.
Yeah. When I worked at the dealership there, you used to play, those old John Deere Day videos at the dealership, and there was always one.
Those were great, by the way.
Oh, they were great. And there's always the same one on the loop, and you peek my head out of the office when I'm doing whatever, talking to somebody, and just there's the same one there. And I don't remember what tractor it was. It was old black and white one. It was the auto reset on the 3-point, if I remember, because they were going down in a dip, and the 3-point just stayed where it's supposed to be. Yeah. And those things always made me laugh because they have a combine video and those kind of things, and the guy that's in there is just like, and the guy, I put myself in the mindset of the person that's watching that for the first time, going like, I just don't see how they can make this any better than what they made. I don't know what else they could do to make this better.
Right.
And, here we are. We're about this far away from having fully autonomous farms that everything does itself. And
I remember being at a John Deere Day my dad had back in the day when Deere came out with the side hill, the 6620 side hill. Mm-hmm. Now, there were no hills where I grew up, West Central Minnesota, but I was watching the movie, and they had these buttons, and they were like reflective. So when you would tilt the button, the combine the side hill would tilt. And I thought that was about the coolest. So what was that? Whatever, early 80s or whatever.
Yeah. Late 70s, early 80s, yeah.
Now, if you could have dropped down an X9 1100 at that point to all those farmers in West Central Minnesota, and it'd be like, where'd that come from? Mars?
It'd be a spaceship.
And then you'd have to tell them what it costs, and then they'd all leave John Deere Day.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Hey, speaking of X9s, our friends at Wheeler Auction and Real Estate out of Paris, Missouri, they got a sale I'm watching this week. I'm sure you've seen it too, Casey. It's on the 6th, Thursday. It's HW, Jenner Ag, Sidens Trichinobi, Heritage Tractor, Van Wall Equipment, Wade out of Mississippi, Effect Equipment, our friend Kirby down there in Missouri, JW Equipment, Greenmark Equipment. So I think there's like 20 plus late model tractors, 8 late model combines, planters, sprayers. So if you're looking for late model equipment, folks, check out that Wheeler auction in Paris. That's to be quite an event.
And that's the 6th tomorrow?
That's tomorrow, yeah.
Right on. Thursday the 6th. So if you listen to this podcast, because it'll come out on Thursday.
You still have time to bid.
You still got time to bid.
WheelerAuctions.com.
WheelerAuctions.com. Check them out.
Kirby and Chaz, they got a great crew down there. They do an awesome job.
Yeah, they do a great job. They really do a good job. All right, Greg, good place to stop. If folks want to reach out to you and have them come to your auction or have you come speak at an event, just go to machinerypete.com and check out the contact page there.
Yep, we got a toll-free number there. You can email us or hit me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Yep, I'll be on the road a lot of auctions coming up. Heading to Ohio, and then I'll be down in southern Iowa. So, yeah, lots of good auctions coming up.
Well, Greg, appreciate you being on the podcast. We'll catch you again next week.
Sounds great, brother.
All right, stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcasts after these.
Looking for more accuracy, more productivity from your current planter? Let's get exact with precision upgrades from John Deere. Start with Exact Emerge and get accurate singulation and spacing at 10 miles per hour. Or choose Exact Shot to promote early root growth and cut fertilizer costs. And with Furrow Vision, save time by verifying seed depth right from your cab. Visit johndeere.com/planner upgrades and see why nothing runs like a Deere.
All right, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. Marcus, got Chip Nell. You're here with Blue Reef Agri-Marketing to talk about what's happening in the marketplace. Chip, how you doing this morning?
Hey, doing well, Casey. Exciting markets. Beautiful fall weather here in the Midwest, and finally got some life in our markets. And I guess we're living right, because we got stuff to talk about. It seems like 6 months we just was watching paint dry in these markets. But,
yeah, I'll tell you what.
Exciting business now.
Yep, we got about three things that are really hitting the marketplace right now. The federal government decided out of the good graces of their heart, they'd put out a November report here on the 14th of November. Got that going on, obviously, the China trade talks, which we can dive into that a little bit. And secondly, we're looking at some pretty dry time right now. And you start looking at that, you start looking at what's going on in South America. So there's plenty of stuff that are kind of pointing to a lot of different things, Chip. So let's start with this first. We haven't had a WASDE report or a supply and demand report for some while now. Since August, I think, right? Or September. And as you're watching these two things come together, we skipped all of the month of October. Here we are halfway through November. We're going to see a report come out. The last USDA report that came out said we're going to be at 189. I've had independent reports that I've been looking at anywhere between 178 on corn up to 186. That's a big swing. That's a big number in between there. Those 6 or 8 bushels are going to really, have a tell of the tape there when you start looking at pricing. As you look at this, Chip, and the guys you talk with, the customers that you're working with, what's your thoughts and feel that the USDA is going to do in November?
Well, I've all along, right, wrong, or indifferent, been ever since spring. We just there were big swaths of the Corn Belt that just did not get planted timely or in very good conditions, and then turned off hot and dry late. Personally, I think that we're going to be closer to trend line than some of these early estimates at 188, 189. The USDA in September, I believe, was 186.2. And just going into this report, number one, there's a lot of questions, right? Because it's such an abnormal report out of I guess the normal flow of things. So they're only going to have less than 2 weeks to put this crop report together. So it begs the question on, can they get all the data sampled in that amount of time with, obviously limited government, right? I mean, there's only the necessary people in the USDA coming back to work for this crop report. Can they get all the information crunched in time? That's going to be a question mark, no matter what number they come out with. But it leaves a lot of interpretation. You still have a lot of people thinking we're in that 186, 187 range. And then you have people thinking that we're down, a touch below 180 up to about trend line 181. I'd be in that camp, that we're 180, 181, just based on the conversations we had with farmers. It's very highly variable this year. There's pockets in Illinois that were really good. People ended up maybe as good or a touch better than a year ago. There's also large areas that are way behind a year ago. The disease issues in the Western Corn Belt. We had some of that in the Eastern Corn Belt. There's just so much you threw at this crop this year that it begs the question, 2 questions. A, can they be accurate enough with only 9 days to gather information for this crop report? Mm-hmm. And 2, if they come out on the low side, it could be explosive to corn, because I think the market thinks that we're still in this 186 yield range. And if so, we probably have enough stocks to kind of get us through without much of a big splash. So it really is an important report for prices in corn, and it leads to wide variances of opinion going into it, which means we could be open to some massive volatility on the 14th, depending on what number they come out with.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just it. I mean, you're looking at what's it look like if you shave off six bushels off of the last report down to where we're at now. It's interesting to watch. I'm going to really be paying attention to the data, what's going on and what's happening there. Let's jump over and talk about China real quick. So China, came to the table like, oh, we love you guys. We're gonna make this work. We're gonna buy a bunch of soybeans and hogs and everything, cotton and the whole deal. We can't wait to get enough stuff from you guys. We heard that once before. Last time we went through this song and dance with them, and it really didn't materialize too much, right? They bought when they needed to buy, and when they couldn't get it from Brazil, they canceled contracts. They did all the things the Chinese always do. Nothing really changed. So I guess as you're looking at this, Chip, your thoughts on this deal with China?
Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't do all the things China's done for hundreds of years, which usually at the end of the day means they don't live up to their promises. So I don't know why this would be any different resolution. So we're still 4 or 5 weeks away, or a few. I'm not sure what a few means, but that's the latest from some of the trade reps here in Washington, is that it's a few weeks away from being signed and I's dotted, T's crossed. There's a lot of room for interpretation on this. And I think that the initial knee-jerk reaction was, yeah, it's great. Beans rallied $1.20 basically in 5 weeks. If you remember, we were just about to fall off the face of the earth and push decisively under $10 on November bean futures. A mid-session that day, Trump comes out with a tweet. I call it the quote-unquote great U.S. soybean farmer tweet, and we've rallied $1.20 since then. I'm concerned on several fronts. It leaves a lot of room for interpretation. They're supposed to buy 12 million tons this calendar year. That leaves them less than 2 months to buy 12 million tons. Not impossible. It doesn't mean we have to ship out 12 million tons. It means they're going to buy 12 million tons, apparently, on what they agreed to. Well, they've already bought 5 to 6 million. So does that mean they're going to buy 6 million more to make it 12 total, or is it 12 more? And then they're supposed to buy 25 million tons per year, per calendar year, for the next 3 years. Well, here's the thing that somewhat is glossed over. We have a crop year, a marketing year in a grain markets. In corn and beans, it's September 1st through the end of August.
Yep.
So next year, they could buy in calendar year 26 for crop year 27. If that's the case, we're still going to fall 300 million bushels below the estimate that the USDA has put out for our bean exports this crop year. If they come in and after the first of the year, they buy 25 million tons for this crop year on top of the 12 million tons they are supposed to buy in the next 60 days, that's a massive amount of beans. That means we're in a rationing situation. Probably means beans have to go north of $12. So it opens the door. All this uncertainty does is open the door up for massive swings in beans over the next 60 plus days at a minimum, and probably over the next 9 to 12 months. Keep in mind that third year, Trump's about to be out of office, right? He's only elected for 4 years. The third year of this Chinese deal, Trump's gone. Yeah. Who's next after Trump? That remains to be seen. It goes back to what you said before. China doesn't have a good history of following through on, in fact, it's culturally embedded for hundreds, if not thousands of years. That's just what they do. And so I don't know why that's going to be any different this year, but there's a lot of optimism, right? If they buy, it's good. Buying something is better than them buying zero, which they've done, for the last 9 or 10 months in here. So at face value, it's good. It caused a big rally in the markets. I think as producers, we need to be cognizant that this is an opportunity. And I'm fearful that it's getting producers a little more bulled up than sitting there realistically saying, okay, we just added $50, $60, $70 an acre to our beans, depending on what my yields were this year. Why think China's going to bail us out with another $2? There's tools in the market to have your cake and eat it too. So,
yep. Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Stick to your plan and just
have a plan. Right.
Yeah.
If you don't have a plan, make a plan. That's the key. Yeah. Doing nothing is not a plan.
Right.
Or a very good plan, I should say.
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's talk a little bit about cattle right now. Every week I watch this, and I think it's all right. There's the moment that we've seen. Last week we saw cattle fall off almost $10 that week, and it all came back plus some again this week. So if you're watching the cattle market now, just about the time you think we're at the top, and you're going to start seeing some stuff fall backwards, even with the Argentine deal, which, I mean, you could kind of go both ways on that as far as what that actually amounts to and how that actually affects the marketplace. But when you're looking at that, you saw a big reaction from that, and now it's all came back from that. I guess, Chip, as you're looking at that cattle market right now, there's still bricks of gold with 4 legs. So I guess what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's been a massive amount of volatility, obviously. I think it swings the other way. You know, we were talking about China, what their intentions are, what's the history of how they have dealt with these markets. So I go back to have the history. We've had 4 years of history in Trump's previous term administration. We've had a year so far, or almost a year, of this current administration with Trump. And he's got a pretty good record of following through and doing what he says. Okay. If you remember, even before he took office, he wanted cheaper gasoline prices. He wanted cheaper egg prices because eggs are out of control. He's got those 2 for 2 there, among other things that he said he's going to do, which he's followed through on. He said he wanted to help the great U.S. soybean farmer. He has so far, to the tune of $50, $60, $70 an acre, and maybe more. He has said very publicly he wants cheaper beef prices. I think you have to take him at face value if you're a cattle producer. I know the conditions are still tight. We haven't fixed anything. Cattle numbers are still down. We haven't expanded the herd. Demand's still pretty good. Nothing's changed in the cattle markets. You still have fairly strong cash markets, by the way. They haven't dropped as much as what you would have thought. Feeder cattle market, cash feeders have, but still a big, buying interest out in the country. But what I come away with is President Trump wants lower beef prices. He's going to get them. I don't know if that means opening the border with Mexico. Obviously, we're going to import some beef from Argentina. Maybe we're going to start importing beef from Brazil again, maybe Australia. So I think that's loud and clear in my mind. We better prepare for and expect lower beef prices, whether that's painful or not. I think that needs to be put into your plan. Whether that goes counter to what the underlying fundamentals are, I don't think it matters. Just like this kind of, I'm going to call it artificial bean demand out of China, right? It's not like the world has a shortage of beans right now. And so when you start kind of messing with the supply or demand of any market, you have unintended long-term consequences. So it's not going to fix any problems. It might make some problems different, but I think we better, in the cattle industry, make a plan of attack that pretty well, takes into account that beef prices are going lower. What's that going to be as a knock-on effect in the cattle markets? And so I think that of anything is what I take loud and clear from a couple weeks ago when he made those tweets about we need lower beef prices. You have to assume he intends on following through aggressively on that.
Yep. Yeah, he's one of the few people that actually does what he says he's going to do. So if he says he's going to do it, he's going to figure it out and make it happen.
That's and he's got a pretty strong track record of doing that. Whether you agree, disagree, when he says he's going to do something, he usually does it and is usually pretty successful at it. So it's going to mess up a lot of things in the cattle market. Probably going to mess up some things in the bean market. If China does buy that amount, we're going to lose every other, normal non-Chinese customer because South American beans in Brazil are currently $1.30 lower. If they have a big crop this growing season, they're going to be $1.50, $2 lower. No one but China is going to buy from us because the free market will still be in effect. You're kind of messing with whether you're trying to lower the cost of the price of beef, whether you're trying to get China enticed into buying some U.S. beans. You're affecting the supply and demand of a market, and usually there's a problem. Some gear in the mechanism breaks somewhere eventually when you start trying to alter that supply and demand. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It's not going to be a fun ride necessarily, but it's certainly going to give us opportunities, right? And we may be staring an opportunity in the face currently in the cattle market and the bean market. And I think producers need to really take note in a very busy time right now during harvest. And it's always busy on the cattle side of the equation. So I think producers need to really sharpen their pencil on their risk management plans right now.
For sure. Let's talk about a little bit what's happening on the energy side. You look at the price of oil. I tell you, oil's just they've hit a spot there, and I don't know if they can't get out of it. You're talking about world supply is really high, and I've read a lot of reports about that. Right now, you're seeing oil trade in the mid to low 60s. Been that way for a while. As you look at this, Chip, what are your thoughts on oil and where you see it going?
Seems pretty fairly priced in here. Like you said, Upper 50s, low 60s seems like that's kind of where fair value is right now. You push much north of 60, you kind of get some pullback. You push much south of 60, you start seeing some underlying value there. OPEC seems like they've been trying to, kind of do their shell game here and talk about, overproduction and trying to talk the market lower and scare people. But it seems to me like we're in fairly stable value here. Though I don't think we have in the energy markets a lot of geopolitical risk premium built in. One thing that was a little bit missed here over the last week was President Trump said we're going to start testing nuclear weapons again. Okay, I don't know what that means. I don't think that necessarily means we're going to be, going into the desert in New Mexico and, letting off atomic bombs, but it's certainly an escalation. And maybe that needs to happen based on what other people in the country are doing or in the world are doing. So I think we're at a flashpoint. Anything could just, at the drop of a hat, a tweet, something happened in the Middle East, something happened in the Russia-Ukraine war, something happened with Chinese-U.S. relations, and all of a sudden you reshuffle the potential there in the energy markets. And so I think the risk in energy at this point is more potential upside than downside based on the way this market is acting right here. And truth be known, $60 probably is pretty fair. I mean, consumers at the gas pump, it's certainly paying less than what we saw over the last year or two or three. So that's a little bit of a relief. I think oil producers probably being able to make a little money in here. And we had that spike up, north of 80 a few months ago. Allow them to get some profitable hedges in place. So I think we're at fair value with very little risk premium in there. And it just seems like we're maybe not in the most stable world in the stable area of our generation right now. And it wouldn't take much to see a flare up somewhere that added $10 or $15 to crude oil in a blink of an eye.
That's an understatement, Chip. That's an understatement. Wow, flashpoints are everywhere. It's like there's plenty of sparks out there. You just need to throw a little fuel on it, and it'll take off and run. Actually, Chip, this is going on in South America right now. We see some planning situations going on. I haven't really seen a lot come out of South America that points to any real struggles, but I guess your thoughts on South America right now.
Yeah. So when you talk about Brazil and they're into their planting time frame, obviously, such a massive country, right? I mean, just take our main part of our growing area here across the Corn Belt and multiply that by about 4 times. So, it's hard to get a handle overall exactly what's happening any point during the growing season in Brazil, but they are on pace, pretty much right on their average pace, getting stuff planted. They're getting some rains in areas that are very beneficial right now and allowing planting to continue. And you don't hear much. I think that's a key point, Casey. You said that earlier. Just don't hear much about anything bad as far as weather out of Brazil. And usually when it's pretty quiet and you're not hearing horror stories about, it's too wet to plant, it's too dry to plant, it's 110 degrees, and it usually means conditions are pretty good. And I think that's the case right now. So they've got a good start. They got to get through the growing season. It's estimated they're going to plant 2 to 3% more acres in Brazil on beans. And if they have an average crop, that's the thing that's the elephant in the room in my mind, or the whale, or whatever you want to call it, because it's a massive crop. You plug in a couple percent more acres down there in a crop like they raised last year, you're talking about a potential Brazil bean crop. This is just Brazil. This isn't including Argentina and Paraguay and Uruguay that raise a lot of beans as well. Just out of Brazil, could be 6.8 plus billion bushels. We raise about 4.5 billion for a perspective there. So that should also be something in the back of producers' minds right now. You got to get that crop grown and harvested. And so we got a few months here that there's going to be uncertainty down there. There's going to be some optimism that China's going to buy beans. But if a 6.8 billion bushel bean crop comes out of Brazil and they start putting that out on the world market into February, first part of March, this bean market has some serious oversupply issues. So we need to keep that in the back of our minds. But I think that's a long way of saying, Casey, that you're right. You haven't heard much out of Brazil. I think that means things are pretty good at this point in time with their planting.
For sure. All right, shit, good place to stop. Folks want to reach out to you, get more information about what you're doing over at Blue Reef Agri-Marketing. What's the best way to do that?
Well, you can always check us out at bluereef.ag, www.bluereef.ag. You can call our main office in Morton, Illinois. That's 309-550-7213. Love to chat with producers about what they're doing with their current risk management plan, and just offer some unbiased opinions on how you might be able to improve that, or some blind spots you may be looking at. So feel free to give us a call, reach out. If you think I'm crazy about stuff I've said, sometimes we get calls, and Casey, they say, "Is that Chip Nellinger there? What that guy said is crazy. Yeah, there's no way that's going to happen." So if you disagree with something I said, feel free to reach out too. Some of those calls we enjoy as well.
Yeah, right on. Everyone's got an opinion, right, Chip?
Exactly. I've got plenty of them. Doesn't mean they're always right.
Right on. All right, Chip, appreciate you being the podcast. We'll catch you again next time.
All right. Thanks, Casey.
All right, stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcast after these messages.
Well, there they are, mocking you.
See you next year, loser.
That weedy area that's got you thinking, man, I hate that spot. Wish I'd sprayed better. Get the last laugh with a sprayer upgrade from John Deere. Precision upgrades that can increase your sprayer's performance, like Exact Apply, advanced nozzles to give you more control at more speeds. It's just one of the many precision upgrades you'll find at johndeere.com. Now, let's see who's laughing.
All right, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. Every once in a while, we'd like to get something on here that's a little bit innovative, and I'm glad that we came across these folks. I got Josh Metzger from Hood & Company on to talk about what's going on over with Kelly Tillage Company, and Josh, it's really cool. I came across this at Commodity Classic last year, and it was probably one of the most innovative things that I'd seen in a while, and just how different it is in the marketplace. But before we get all that, got to learn a little bit about you and Hood & Company and how your relationship with Kelly Tillage and what that looks like. So let's do that first. So Josh, welcome to the show. Glad you can make it on. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do for Hood & Company.
Thanks, Casey. Thanks for having us on. So I am a sales engineer here at Hood & Company. We're an independent rep agency, and we look for innovative tools to solve problems that farmers have. And so we build a dealer network for the companies that we rep for. Kelly's one of those. And they're our main tillage company that we rep for. And we just look for problems that farmers have and how we can solve it. And generally for us, we look internationally for most of our solutions. We are comfortable with international travel and dealing with time zones and all that sort of stuff. So when you look at our line card, it's mostly internationally based, including Canada. Do quite a bit of Canadian equipment as well, and historically, all over the globe. So yeah, that's what we do. And we're the go-between between the manufacturer and the dealer and ultimately the end user. Because there's challenges when they're based overseas, or they don't have a lot of the same legal requirements on how equipment has to be signage and transport widths and all the different things that you face. And so we help walk them through that process without them having to come here and actually hire a U.S. Person to do that. But then we really encourage our manufacturers to use some contract manufacturing. So while Kelly is an Australian company, the majority of our products are actually made here, and the majority of our components are sourced and made here as well. So that shortens lead times, that gets the quality to a U.S. standard, what farmers are looking for, and all that sort of thing. So it's been a great relationship. We've been partnered with Kelly for about 18 years now. My boss, Steve Hood, the founder, saw what Kelly was doing and brought them here to the United States from where they're located in South Australia.
Right on. We'll talk a little bit about that. How did an Australian company get hooked up with a U.S. company over here?
Yeah, so originally we were the Phillips rotary harrow rep, and there was quite a few products out there like that, like the Phoenix harrow, and I think Rightway has made some rotary harrows, or spike tooth harrows. And really, when you look at it from overhead, it's half of a Kelly. It's just one row of discs or chains, spike chains, either like this, going through the soil, or like the Phillips is the back half or whatever. And so when you look at that, and my boss Steve was at a farm show, and a guy from Australia came by and basically told him what he was selling, the Phillips harrow, was obsolete in the country that he was from, which was Australia, which is where the Phillips came from. So when you have somebody tell you what you're selling is obsolete where it was invented, and now we're using this other technology, this disc chain technology, you tend to listen, especially in our business, what we do. And so Steve got a hold of Shane Kelly, the owner of Kelly. At the time, it was called Kelly Engineering. Now it's Kelly Tillage. But got a hold of Shane Kelly, and Shane, you just through that phone call, sent a demo machine over here. We took it to an area of the country we know that has really tough conditions, which is rice farming, specifically in the Mississippi River Delta.
Yeah.
They've got very harsh conditions, very abrasive conditions. And if a tillage tool can stand up there, it can pretty much hold up anywhere. So that's where we started, really hit a home run with it, and have just been growing in that area and outside of that area ever since.
Okay. All right. So that's a pretty good story. I mean, you're right. If it can hold up in rice conditions, it can hold up anywhere, and that's for sure. So I think the thing about when I first saw the Kelly Tillage pieces at Commodity Classic last year, the one thing that really stood out to me was the uniqueness of what it is. So I guess walk me through why it's so unique, and what's it doing for me in the field.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it's I always say what makes a Kelly unique. What's my 10-second pitch is that it does about 1 to 2 inches of tillage, but it disturbs 100% of the soil profile in that 1 to 2 inches. Anything else, vertical tillage, whatever it is, you'll still be able to see which direction the corn or the crop was planted. But a Kelly, it will disturb 100% of that soil profile 1 to 2 inches deep. And that's really what sets us apart from, other tools out there on the market.
Okay, so I've heard a lot about shallow tillage over my career, and there's a million different things you look at: minimum tillage, no till, and all these different things that come into play. What are some of the benefits of shallow till, and how that works with the Kelly tillage piece?
Yeah, most farmers that are doing minimum till or no till, they're trying to preserve some things. They're trying to preserve subsoil moisture. They're trying to preserve beneficial microbes. They're trying to preserve organic matter. So they have lots of reasons for not doing tillage. But in the end, there are some things that only tillage can solve. And because the Kelly provides that complete disturbance of the soil profile, it can do some things at a very shallow or minimum till condition. It can do those things, but still get a lot of benefit that maybe deeper tillage would have. So what is that? Weed termination. You got to disturb 100% of the soil profile, otherwise you're going to be skipping and missing weeds. I think I've ever heard of anybody brag on their VT tool how it terminates weeds.
Right.
So that the Kelly does that. Spreading out the residue. So whether it's springtime and the residue's moved over the winter, or it's fall and maybe the combine didn't spread it out as great as it should, or you've had some wind or whatever, you tend to have residue that ends up in heavier concentration in one area and little concentration or no concentration in another area. And so if you go in and try to plant a crop in that, you get very uneven emergence. You may have in those bare areas, the crop germinates, on a certain number of days, and then up to 3, 4, 5 days later, it finally germinates through that heavy residue. And so what the Kelly can do right in front of the planter is come through and even that residue out and get that field all to the same, so the field is more uniform. And then when you run that planter through, you're going to get a lot better planter performance because it's not having to deal with a pile of residue here and bare soil there and all the different things like that. So then you will get, more even emergence when you have better planter performance. So you get that. The Kelly run in that shallow tillage preserves the soil moisture that's deeper. When you till, say, 4 inches deep with a field cultivator, and then you plant the corn seed at, say, 2 inches, you're drying out that soil to get in there and have better, planter performance, closing wheels and stuff. You need, if it's a wet spring, you got to dry out a little bit.
Yep.
But then you've destroyed all that subsurface moisture, and really that loose soil that's been dried out actually insulates the soil beneath that has moisture in it. But your corn seed is up here in that 2 inches. It's got to get through 2 inches of loose, dry soil before it can get down where the moisture is. And with the Kelly, we're only doing the top 2 inches that we're drying out. So you're planting that corn seed right on that layer of where that good subsoil moisture is. It may be too wet to get the planter through in a no-till environment. So, get the Kelly in there, get that little bit of soil dried out. So you got great planter performance, but then we're preserving all of that subsoil moisture. And that's why, historically we've been in rice fields or in the mid-South where it's Mississippi River Delta, where it's really wet, heavy clay soils that are almost impossible to dry out to get a planter or a drill through.
Yeah.
So the Kelly's going to come in there and just dry that little bit out, get it planted, but we've preserved that subsoil moisture for that crop to come up in. And then, we can, in the fall time, we can process residue. Some guys are in highly erodible soils, so they can't turn it black. They're not flat and black of, the I states. They've got to preserve a certain amount of percentage of residue on the surface. But if they leave the stalk standing with this BT corn and some of these higher yields, it'll just sit there and it'll never break down. Mm-hmm. So getting the stalks broken up a little bit more down on the ground where it's in contact with those soil microbes, but we're not turning it black. That there's a lot of benefit to that as well for shallow guys looking for a shallow tillage solution where they're not able to do deeper or more conventional tillage.
Okay. So, one of the things that you talked a lot about heavy clay, you talked about rice and those kind of things, what that looks like, getting something like this across all soil spectrums, like my neck of the woods out here where things are really sandy, really loose soil. The wind blows too hard. We get dust storms. You get that kind of situation. Talk to me a little bit how you would take this product across the spectrum, right? How am I going to use it out here compared to how I'm going to use it maybe in central Kansas where there's some heavier clay?
Yeah, we have quite a few different disc options, and that's part of what we get involved with you as a farmer and your dealer. We really spend some time interviewing you. What are your soil conditions? What are your tillage practices? What are your goals? Because we firmly believe we can have a Kelly on every farm. We just need to pick the right disc combination. And so that just, a lot of that goes back to soil type. So we might pick a disc combination that's less aggressive. We have a spike chain. It's a disc chain that the discs have been cut into spikes. That would be phenomenal in a condition where you have a lot of lighter, loamy soils or sandy soils. We also have a lighter finishing disc that we actually use it in the heavy clays, but if you're in a high sand or more sandy environment, sometimes that may be what you're looking at. And a lot of it has to do with the farmer. One guy's too much tillage is another guy's not enough tillage, and they farm the same ground right across the same fence line. So it's not a soil change. It's really a management philosophy on whether they want to see a lot more tillage or less tillage. And that's where the Kelly is so adaptable, because we can choose a disc combination for your farm. We do probably have somewhere in the 30 to 40% of our farmers may own an extra set of front chains, so they will configure it more aggressively for fall tillage. And then they'll come in and for springtime change out for more of a finishing disc. A Or we have guys that are more conventional tillage. They don't use their Kelly in the fall. They're going to run a disc ripper or a tandem disc or a high-speed disc. They're going to do conventional tillage in the fall. And then they come in, they just need the Kelly to make a seed bed for the spring. And we can configure it that way. So because we have listened to what the farmers want, and we have moved outside of that Mississippi River Delta, that's really where a lot of the technological advancements in the Kelly has been, surrounding what discs we have available and what we choose for you and your farm. And that I think is what makes the Kelly more than just a one-trick pony, or it's only going to work in the Mississippi River Delta or whatever. Because we have all those disc options, and it can be confusing, granted, to the end user. Like, well, they got all these ones. Which one do I choose? But that's where we get into good conversation. And it is more than just soil type. It's really, what is your tillage practice? What are you doing now? What are you looking to replace? We practice solutions-based selling. So what problem do you have that you're trying to solve? Why are you looking at a Kelly? A lot of guys, they see it, it's unique, it looks totally different than anything they've seen before. So you, Mr. Farmer, what do you think it could solve? And then we, with our knowledge and experience, we come in and we help make a recommendation and help, get the Kelly in your farm operation.
Yep. Okay. So on that different farming practices and management, like you talked about a little bit, if I'm a no-till guy, minimum till guy, conventional till guy, those kind of things, when I'm looking at a Kelly, how am I going to measure success on what that looks like? And then how am I going to look at an ROI on those three different farming practices?
Yeah, we have quite a few evidence-based ROI interviews with other farmers. And some farmers are paying for their Kelly by a reduction in chemicals. So they're using the Kelly to terminate weeds, chemically resistant weeds. We say nothing resists a Kelly, or nothing resists iron when it comes to weeds and weed termination. So a lot of our farmers are seeing a reduction in the amount of weed killing chemicals that they're using, whether it's Roundup or glyphosate or something along those lines. So that's one ROI. We have guys that'll tell you they're getting better planter performance, so they're getting more even emergence. And we know from the research that Randy Dowdy's done and others that that emergence window is really critical to yield, and having seeds emerge outside of the window that most of the field emerged in, that those seeds actually detract from yield. So we look at the Kelly as something that resets the field, makes it very even, and makes it very friendly for your planter. We have other guys that tell us that how they paid for their Kelly was the fuel savings. It's for a 46-foot, 40-foot wide tool, whatever model you choose. You're not using some massive horsepower tractor. We're generally speaking looking at 6 to 8 horsepower per foot. So when you look at the fuel savings and not needing a real high horsepower tractor, there's some ROI based there. It's high speed. So when you start looking at labor costs, we're generally speaking running 7 to 10 miles an hour. We think there's a nice sweet spot between 8.5 and 9.5 miles an hour that we like to run in. So you're going to get a lot done in a day with a Kelly, say running ahead of the planter, or running, processing residue in the fall. So we can really kind of look at each farm operation and what you're expecting out of the Kelly, and then how we're going to pay for this thing. Like you said, all these things cost money. These tools, tillage tools, are not getting any cheaper. For the manufacturer, the cost of steel is through the roof. It's very difficult for them to control costs. They're not Ford. They're not GM. They can't tell the steel factories what they're going to pay for steel today. So when we look at those things, though, we see a lot of value in the Kelly. And then also when you start looking at the cost of ownership, it's extremely low maintenance. There's nothing out there that's no maintenance, but the Kelly is as close to no maintenance as you're ever going to get in a tillage tool. I mean, one of the discs that we offer has a 50,000 acre wear warranty. What I mean,
Wow.
a wear warranty, not
Okay.
manufacturer's defect, a wear warranty
Yeah.
on a disc. Nobody offers anything like that.
Right.
We have a 4-year frame warranty. Very few companies offer anything over a year frame warranty. We stand by, we build the tool very well, and then we put our money where our mouth is and try to give the farmer some peace of mind behind that. So it is extremely low maintenance, low wear. And then because of all that, just get on a secondary website that's selling, used equipment, and look up the price of a Kelly. They really hold their value more than any other tillage tool out there. I mean, when you start looking at Kellys that are 3, 4, 5 years old and they're holding, let's say, 80% of their value, there's nothing else out there that does that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's Kellys that are still, that are 8, 10 years old that are still holding 50, 60% of their value. And there's just nothing out there on the market that does that. So it may cost a little bit more up front, but you're really going to see that payback as you use the Kelly and join the Kelly family.
Especially on the tillage piece, right? Holding your resale value that long. I mean, typically, most people when they're trading a tillage piece in, there's either a new kind of technology has come out, or this piece is wore out and I don't want to change the blades anymore, type of thing. And you see a huge depreciation on tillage pieces. So if a Kelly's holding 80% of its value after 3 years and 50% after 10 years, I mean, that's really a good investment when you start, especially on a tillage piece. So that's very, very cool. As far as your dealer network right now, you take a look across the United States. Where do you have a dealer network at, and what's your overall kind of plan for growth of your dealer network?
Yeah, I mean, where we started was the Mississippi River Delta, and we have a very heavy presence there. We've got good dealer coverage. We've got high farmer usage in that area, and many guys have given us feedback and things that they couldn't farm without a Kelly. Very early on, we started in northern Missouri. We had a dealer who has since retired, but he was a dealer farmer and was an early adopter and sold quite a few units through that neck of the woods. And now we've got, since his retirement, we have good dealer coverage through that area, and have actually brought on some new dealers a new dealer in southern Iowa as that has kind of grown out. Since I've been with the company, we've grown into eastern Kansas. We've grown our Kentucky business. We're doing really well in western Kentucky, and even starting to move into some central Kentucky. We're starting to grow into southern Ohio, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, have a good presence in there, just starting some new dealers in that area. So yeah, that's where we've kind of just started to grow to. It was our when you look at a company and you say, well, you guys have been in the U.S. for 18 years. Why haven't I heard about you? We had such a high adoption rate in the South, we couldn't build them fast enough to grow outside of that area. So some of our challenges to growth have been manufacturing them quick enough. And we have growing 10, 20, 30%, depending on the year, always have all these years of positive growth, and still couldn't meet the demand in the areas we already were. So we're working on increasing manufacturing capacity even further than we are now. And as this market, it's no secret the U.S. Farm economy is definitely in a slump, but we'll get out of it. And as the market changes, we intend to grow into new areas. I see the Kelly really shines in areas that are marginal, highly erodible soils where there's a lot of minimum till, no-till practices. So I see us growing into those areas. I see a lot of value growing into, let's say, the Corn Belt or the I states. It's just convincing those farmers how to try something new and adopt something new in those areas. But I see us as then secondary tillage. When a no-till or minimum till farmer buys us, we're his primary tillage. He doesn't own a disc or a disc ripper, maybe even a speed disc, but he bought a Kelly to solve some problems that only tillage can solve. But you go to the Corn Belt where they're doing more conventional tillage, and that's where the Kelly can be a great secondary tillage tool. I would look for guys who have high-speed planters. We've had multiple customers tell us that, okay, I bought a high-speed planter, but I don't necessarily have a high-speed seed bed, or the tillage tool that I'm running in front of the planter isn't necessarily high speed. And that's where the Kelly improves planter performance, whether it's a high speed or conventional planter. But it improves that performance, but it also is high speed itself. So you're going to get over a lot of ground that maybe your tool you've been using in a pre-plant secondary tillage pass hasn't been able to achieve like the Kelly can. So I go back to, a Kelly on every farm. I do firmly believe that every farmer that's producing some sort of row crop or commodity, that there is a place for us, whether it's as secondary tillage or primary tillage or whatever it would be. We can adapt the tool to fit your farming operation.
Right on. Well, this has been great stuff, Josh. Any final thoughts you want to throw out there before we close things down?
Yeah, you can find us kellytillage.com. We also are on social media. We've got a pretty active Facebook page, and there's definitely some videos on YouTube and things like that. So feel free to reach out. You'll start seeing if you're on TikTok. Chuck Weldon is a Kelly user, and he does a lot of promotion for us and uses the product, so you can see a real farmer. Chuck's a real farmer, and he's a great asset for us as a user. Been using Kelly for years, and we're happy to have him promoting our product as a user and an ambassador really for the company. So yeah, there's lots of ways to reach out. You can also get a hold of Hood & Company. You can call us 417-865-2100. We're happy to just have a conversation with you, and just talk about what Kelly can do on your farm. It does get so specific. Soil types, farming practices, crop conditions. We're running in everything from some guys using it in some Bahia pastures all the way to corn, soybeans, cotton, rice, wheat, rye. We got guys all over the place. It's all over the map. We've sold this thing. I got a guy out in California that's using it to reclaim vineyards and to then sow a yearly forage crop in some of this reclaimed vineyard ground. Got a vegetable guy in New Mexico using it. Got a dairy farmer in upstate New York. I mean, it's really all over the place, and that really does speak to the versatility of this tool.
And if I want to become a dealer for Kelly, do I just go to Kelly's website there, or what's the easiest way to have that conversation?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, and dealer or farmer, you can certainly send requests through Kelly's website. We typically push people to the manufacturer's website that we're repping for, so you can reach out through their website. You can again give us a call. We're the ones responsible for putting on new dealers and growing new dealers and training and education and demos and all that stuff. That's all we do that all for Kelly here in the U.S. So you'll be interacting with us and our company if it comes to dealer inquiries, and we'd love to put on some new dealers in some of these areas where we're not currently selling Kellys.
Right on. Well, Josh, appreciate you being on the podcast. So I'll catch you again next time.
All right. Thanks, Casey. Thanks for having us.
All right. Stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcast after these messages.
Get the latest markets, weather, and rural news whenever it works for you. Farm Journal TV is on Roku, Fire TV, and mobile. Try it for free for 14 days and take ag with you everywhere.
All right, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. We got Aaron Sindel back here talking about what's happening in the marketplace. Aaron, how you doing today?
Good. Hey, everybody. How are you?
It's
another day on the high plains.
Yeah, it is. We've had
going to be warm today, breaking 70.
We had
which is good because we hit 15.
Yeah. We had Sunday I went outside. We were leaving for church. Went outside and it was oddly warm. You know what I mean? Because it was going to be like 76 degrees or 79 degrees or whatever it was Sunday.
Saturday was beautiful.
Yeah. Today we're supposed to hit something similar to that, but it's we're that time of the year now where you're going to get 70 one day and 15 the next, and then you're going to warm up to like 50, and then you're going to get a 65 or a 70 thrown in there, and then snow.
It's four different outfits in the pickup season.
Yeah, it is. You have winter in the morning, fall in the mid morning, afternoon, spring, and then you have a nice summer day by about 3:00.
From about 2 to 4:30.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then
anything but a t-shirt, you're roasting.
Yeah, and then it quickly goes to winter when it goes. The sun.
When that
goes
sun
down.
falls, the temp falls faster than the sun.
It does. It really does. It's like it's got to get ahead. It's almost like they're racing against each other.
It is.
All right, we were going to have a little trip down memory lane before we started recording here, and we were talking about what it was like early in our careers when we get pictures, right? And I remember when I first started in the business, there would be, I started doing this in 2006, like 2006, and at that point, digital cameras were about the size of a notebook, and they were they'd start to kind of scale down, but the pictures weren't that good, right? They were grainy. They weren't. You get a picture, and there was no real way. Like it took most of an afternoon to load those pictures into a file on your computer so you could have them, and then if you wanted to send them to somebody, it took you had to send 55 emails if you had 55 pictures, you had to send 55 emails.
Don't you dare send 2 pictures in an email, man.
It's gonna bounce back. And so as you're working your way through that, up until like 2000 and almost 9, I was still getting pictures in the mail from guys. They give me those. They send those 5x7 Kodak, like instant camera thing. Take them down to Walmart and get the 1 hour photo thing, and you get this package of pictures. And I got a lot of Polaroids and those kind of things. And then things slowly started to change. And then next thing you know, you're using your cell phone to take pictures and store pictures and to do things. And now we're into videos. So, but it was early in the career. It was uncommon it was more common for me to send pictures, or I would just take pictures. I did this one. I used to do this a lot. I would just take pictures on the camera, and then just put the camera in the mail, and I would send them the whole camera and everything, and then they would get them developed, and then 3 days later I'd get a phone call. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm looking for right there. That's it. And we go through that. So it was the evolution of that has changed, but you've done it a lot longer than I have, Aaron. So talk a little bit about when you started out, what it was like.
Well, I can remember back in 2000 having one computer, and granted, this was also a car dealership. Okay, I think that is why we had the tech we did. Okay, so the years, because you had like with that car stuff, they're like day one, we're sending you over the internet, and we're still getting the Case IH. Here's your air seeder price book in the mail. Here's your tractors. You get your stack of paper and you put it in your 3-ring binder, and that's your price book, right? Those were the good old days, as they say. So back in the year 2000, we had one computer in the dealership that had internet. It was the car department's, like that's where they'd bring a customer and build out a car kind of deal. But I used it back when Tractor House was just merely anything past an idea. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Like I was like the third guy that logged on,
Mm-hmm.
So I can remember all the way back then, even before that, I remember the main thing to look when I was in college in the late 90s, the main thing that you could tractor geek out on was Machine Finder.
Yeah.
The John Deere thing. And you could have My Shed on there, which you could like save your favorite.
Well, yeah, I remember
Me
that.
and my buddies would all sit in the computer lab and add different and compare our lines of machinery we found that day on Machine Finder. Mine, of course, was always the 1980s and 70s Massey Ferguson Museum. but to prove a point, you can still do it. So anyway, on to the selling part of it. In the first dealership I was at, we didn't really do, of course, we're still talking, the Fastline ad was imperative, right? That's what you had, man. That was what you had back then. There was no Tractor House magazine. Anybody's website was just one tick past an idea. Your ad in Fastline was gospel, man. And I worked at a place where everything said call. So that trick.
I love that guy.
Yeah, yeah, call. So anyway, the first trade deal that I ever did, sadly have to admit, I never did get Polaroids, but I did get 5x7s. And I can remember we carried a special line that we had like Nebraska, South Dakota, and Iowa, I think. It was sunflower dump carts. They were not just every sunflower dealer could be a dump cart dealer.
Right.
And because we were in the heart of seed corn country, that was a big thing for us. So that is something we would sell, multiple states. That is the first time we sent pictures of a new dump wagon to a guy in Iowa, and it took 3 hours. I remember because I left the dealership at like 8, right? It took like 3 hours to send 10 pictures because the literature had like 3 pictures on it. The literature was no help. So it's like, oh man, we have to like create the literature so this guy can see it. And yes, you can put the hitch on the back, pull it the other direction, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so things have come a long way. So much, in fact, I would say, Casey, here we are 25 years later and guys are numb if there's more than 5 pictures of anything. I get call after call every day. Nobody has looked past the 3rd picture because when you bring it up, you got your big picture and your little pictures underneath, pretty much regardless of what website. Nobody scrolls. Nobody reads the description. How many acres are on that? Well, it's the 4th line item.
Yeah, that was the other thing too with that one. We would send
maybe
pictures.
Some of that's personality, and it's not a generational thing because somebody 25 and somebody 75 will call with the same thing. It's kind of maybe a personality pocket of the world you're in, different factors at play of why that happens. But then I will have guys like me who reach out via the email instead of a call because I got others to do, and I don't want him calling because I got to do. Reach out via email. Hey, I see it has this. I see it has this. I see it has this. I just have one more question. What's this? Okay, email him back. Then you get a text. Hey, sounds good. Didn't talk to him.
That's about normal these days.
Yeah. Like it is such. You still have. I sold a tractor last month. I don't text. I don't have email. Well, I don't know how to sell this to you then because I have to get this signed digitally to even mark it sold. Well, why is that? I'm like, because it's 2025. I don't know what to tell you.
Unfortunately, that's the world we live in.
Yeah, like the elevator texts you all day. I know that. They text me, like the most basic thing in earth has gone communication-wise, ultimate tech. Maybe not processes and all that, but in the communication world, and that's where tech is probably at its highest point across anything in the world, you still have the bare minimum. Like I get numerous now. Also in ag, we deal with regions where go ahead and have your iPhone. It ain't going to work. Literally, this guy has to walk on top of the roof of the house to get a signal with his StarTAC, or his Nokia brick.
Right.
That's still out there, man, because that's ag and that's where we're at. We're not in the metro.
Yep. Yeah. The one thing about, guy first taught me how, when I first got in this business, he was teaching me how to do stuff, and he'd get those pictures to come in. And remember how when they would load like one night at a time, and they would just, like that. And he would take his, as I was loading down, he would take the cursor of his mouse and he'd run that cursor across, and he would just stare at his cursor all the way across, and he would just make the same line, like basically like if you were mowing your lawn, right? Going back and forth with that cursor. And I go, what are you doing? What's that cursor?
Studying it as it downloads?
Well, that, and he would be like, if I try to look at just the picture as a whole, I'll miss things. But if I look at it just where my cursor's at and I go real slow and just look at the point of my cursor as I'm going across, I'll catch whatever's in front of that cursor. Okay, that seems like an awful lot, but that makes sense. I mean,
dude, sadly, that's more thorough than we are today. I guarantee you, because we had no choice but to sit there and look.
Yep, and you know, I'm as guilty too. Like if good example, I'm trying to find my daughter a car. First car thing, I have a pretty staunch rule in the first car thing that it's not going to be very pretty. It's not. It's going to have basically 4 wheels and windows. That's what you're going to get, because you're going to bounce it off of something, right? And as I'm looking through this stuff, it amazes me how the lack of detail that you see on people when they put stuff on there for sale. And I'm talking whether you're talking about cars, tractors, whatever you're talking about, but you'll get 4 pictures. I know Facebook limits the number of pictures you can put up, but I think you can put up 10 pictures.
Dude, you can put like 20 pictures on.
All right, so 20 pictures, right? So you'll get 4 pictures of a car, and those 4 pictures will have horrible angles, like the camera's sideways, and the car looks like the earth is tilted to the right, and it's dirty. It just looks like crap, and they want $7,500 for this car, right? I'm like, well, I don't. And then you're like, hey, can you send me some better pictures of the car? And it's like you've asked them to do something that is
like the most. Asked them to go build fence.
Well, it's not even that. Like you've asked them to do something that is completely is like, who do you think you are asking a question like that? What gives you the right to talk to me that way? And then the second thing that you get is you just get the same pictures again, right? And I'm just like, I don't understand. You want me to I'm not going to come down and look at a car if I don't feel good about it when it's already, what I'm looking at there already. Like I'm not going to waste 2.5 hours of my time to go look at a vehicle. When I get there, I already don't feel comfortable about it when I'm looking at it, right? The description runs good, right? And I'm like, oh, great. What's that mean? And that's like, that's like you telling me it's a 5 and my 5 is a different version of your 5, right? So it's like the whole scenario.
Well, and a 75 Pontiac Omega that runs good is different than a 2004 Buick Lucerne.
Yeah,
that runs good.
So I think when you're looking at this, kind of what we're doing here is a little bit of what we're talking about here is kind of how the evolution of pictures have taken place. But the other thing too is the internet's made the world a very small place. Right. So always look at your local dealer first and get a look and feel for what's there. But if they don't have what you're looking for and you want to go out on the internet and try to find something, there's some things that you need to understand about what it is that you're looking at and what you're going to send there for. I mean, so if I'm evaluating a piece of equipment from a guy that I don't know, that's 2 states away, and they want me to put a trade value on a piece of equipment, and I get 5 pictures from you, those 5 pictures aren't going to tell me a story of the piece of equipment.
No,
right? I don't. Your detail that you've given me on the phone is very limited, and those kind of things. So there's also questions that I don't know that I have a very common stable of questions I'm going to ask a guy about a piece of equipment that comes in, right? There's some very high level questions you're going to ask.
Right.
Hey, here are the pictures that I want you to send me. If you send me those pictures, take a look at it. I'll take a look, go through and look at those pictures, kind of start discerning one way or the other what it looks like, those kind of things. And if I can't get that information from you, it's going to be real hard for me to give you any kind of a value on a piece of equipment that the same kind of value that if someone local that's 10 miles down the road comes down to your farm, takes a look at it, walks around it, takes a look at it, and does all those kind of things. The thing about pictures and videos and those kind of things now with the ease that you can do that nowadays is that you're giving me the information that I can do a virtual walk around of that piece of equipment. And I can make sure that what I'm looking at is there, because there's a baseline price for everything that gets sold out in the marketplace. Right? And that's an auction value, right? That's the baseline price, right?
Yep.
Worst case scenario, this is the price. Now, the information that you give me is either going to increase that baseline value or decrease that baseline value. And all those things are going to come into play. So when you're looking at having that conversation with somebody on the phone that's a ways away from you and they have what you're looking for, and you want to trade a piece of equipment in on that, you need to give them more information about that piece of equipment than you would give the local guy that comes in, because you have to know you're selling that piece of equipment to the guy on the other end of the phone just as much as he's selling you the piece of equipment that you want. And that idea of the more information that you give him, the more pictures that you give him, the more just all around just detail about that piece of equipment, work orders, all that different stuff about that machine, it paints the picture of, all right, cool, I feel good about this. When it shows up, it's going to be what you said it was going to be. Because I can't tell you how many times I brought a piece of equipment in from someplace else that I swear to God, that cannot be this picture and this machine do not look the same.
Right.
They're barely the same color, right? And so as that starts to happen, the idea that you have to have as much information about that piece of equipment as a guy. And I've gone and done things where I've given more for a trade-in than the dealership gave, that the dealership that they were working with was going to give them. Not because I wanted to sell the piece of equipment I had. It's because I felt that confident about a piece of equipment that was there. Right. I talked to a bunch of different sources, different wholesale buyers, those kind of things, sent the pictures, information, got to give feel for what was going on. And it came back with a strong number. Right. At the same time, I've taken the same information that guys given me and I look at it and said, there's no way I want this trade in and I'm going to price it that way. And that's just the give and take how it is. So when I'm looking at something like that, you can't have enough information when you're working with someone that you've never worked with before and you don't know how their operation runs. And, you don't know the ins and outs of what's going on there. Like having that detailed information makes all the difference in the world when you're trying to, again, you're selling your machine. Your trade-in is there's someone's buying that from you. So you are selling that machine just as much as anybody else is when it comes right down to it. Your trade-in, someone's buying that just like you're buying something else from somebody else. You have to look at it like that when you're going there. And the best way to get the optimum price for your machine is having as much information about it as you can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A couple things to hit on from my world and everyday experience. The program that we use will hold up to 50 pictures, and we are constantly on the salesman to make sure we have every single picture humanly possible on there, right? There's no reason not to. It's 2025. We have all the tech we can need to make that happen. Personally, what I do, when I have a guy call and it is something that we also, let me interject here, we also as a used equipment team will travel store to store, the stores that have the heavier inventory. And we as a team will have picture day and all the pictures are the same. They're all, uniform, look good, worthwhile pictures, not stupid pictures that make no sense, all that kind of stuff. In depth, in the machine, that kind of stuff. Yet still you have guys call and they send you 5 pictures. I always tell guys, okay, here's what the pictures are. Before we do anything with funds, okay, I will go send you 100 pictures. I'll go take you a video. I'll send you shop records. I will do whatever. That has to go both ways, though.
100%. Yeah.
Because again, the bad part about it is this, and I get it. I was talking to a guy the other day, and it's, a rainy day or whatever, and he's calling on tractors because it's a rainy day. Tractor's 10 miles away. He has 10 pictures on his phone. The checklist that I built that I send to guys in a text is 20, 25 pictures. We should have 50 online. So I'm asking for half of what we have. If our guys did it right, if not, we should at least have the same amount. Okay. Send me the pictures, run the numbers. If the numbers work, then I will flood you with pictures. I will flood you with video, get you whatever. The reason I don't do that right away is point blank. It might be 4 hours away. It might be 6 hours away. We are a big country out here and nothing is next door. But I do that as a service to make sure, just as you were saying, you have the confidence and you feel good about that piece you're trading in. I do that for the buyer. So, and the reason I do that for the buyer is, one, I feel it's appropriate to do that and make sure you get the best you can. I bought a semi under $10,000. Okay. So we're talking bottom barrel scraping stuff, right? Come out of Indiana. But here's the thing, man. He had 40 pictures online and 2 videos. It's running, walk around video, and a video of it driving and shifting through the gears. One email, and I bought it. Hey, what's the backstory? Looks good.
Yep. And that's the thing too. I think you have to realize if you have something listed online, like there's a lot of for sale by owner sites and those kind of things.
Oh yeah.
If you have something listed online and somebody calls you about that, they're not there to just fill hours in their day, right? They're calling you because that specific
you might get 1 or 2 of those.
Yeah. That specific piece though, but that person that's just calling to quote unquote fill hours in a day, they called you about that specific piece for a reason, right? Because if it's fitting either a niche of something they want or something that they want update 2 or something like that. My opinion has always been, if someone calls you about a piece of equipment online, if someone's calling you about that piece of equipment, they're 85 to 90% sure that's what they want. The other 10 to 15% that's laying out there is the, hey, I saw in the picture that have, when was the last time X was done to it? Right. Or does it have, I didn't see this in the pictures, but I know this is sometimes a pretty common thing. Does it have blah, blah, blah? What activations does it have? That kind of stuff. Like those are the kind of things, that they, if you don't have that listed in there, they're pretty sure that that's what they want. And they're going to start making that decision based off that. That's the thing about online buying today compared to online buying in the past. Online buying in the past was, I'm going to go through like a catalog, right? I'm going to look through here and I'm going to start highlighting things that I find interesting. Right. Then I'm going to go to these dealerships and I'm going to go look at them. And this is that. Today, it's still a catalog kind of feature, but the way that these sites work now is I can narrow down the hour range I'm looking for, the year range I'm looking for, the specs I'm looking for, and I can get down to like, okay, there's 700 of these tractors on the marketplace. Here are the 20 that I want to look at. Right. And now I'm going to narrow those 20 down to 10 to 5, whatever else. So I'm going to call about these 5 machines. And I'm going to start picking my way through them. I hate to say this, but freight used to be a big deal, and it's not as big of a deal anymore because it's, when you're talking about $5,000 or $10,000 on 450,000, it doesn't move the needle that much. Well, when you were talking about 5 or 10,000 on 20,000, that makes a big difference.
Right. But even there, if you're talking 5,000 on 10,000, that's still 5,000 less, I mean, and 10,000 is a blink of an eye, tractor to tractor, combine to combine. So,
yep. And so I think my final thought on this, and Aaron, I'll give you time to give your final thought too. But when I'm looking at this is, you have to look at it when you're even working with your dealership, right? And your dealership's going to have a lot more information. If they've done the work to your machines, those kind of things, they're going to have a lot of information that should be sitting there. But when you're talking to them, you have to look at your trade-in. You're selling that trade-in as much as you're buying the piece that you're getting from them, right? You have a yard full of iron, right? Just like a dealership has a yard full of iron. That's yours to sell, and this is theirs to sell. You're both buying something. And I've never met anybody that just buys something for the sake of buying something and does zero research and has no idea what they're doing. Right now, I'm sure there's probably people out there who've done that, but the point of that being is all the information on both sides needs to be there. And I think the more that information you have, the better everyone feels about working with each other. And then you can start talking about financing and what the deal structure looks like and all those different things that come into play. That part of it is so much easier when you've established the value of the machine on both sides.
Or maybe you see some nitwit in a video and you're like, what is this about? But that's a deal.
True. Yeah. With the feathered hair blowing
in. That happened too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So that's my 2 cents on that. Aaron, you got final thoughts before we close down?
You hit the nail on the head. In the machinery business, we always talk about trade-ins as buying that piece because that's what we're doing. As the producer, you are selling that piece, whether it's a trade-in or you're selling it. As the trade-in, do a little due diligence. If you're doing it local, get the combine out of the shed for them. Especially. It's always, okay, we got done with harvest, we cleaned it up, and it's in the backest of the back corners. It's never by the door.
Never. Never by the door.
Never by the door. Yeah. Get the combine out, something like that, where it's got to be looked at real close and opened up. And the other thing, we want to open traps and that kind of stuff. And if you didn't do that, then we're going to leave a mess on the floor and nobody wants that, and it's just a wreck. So if you're doing local, do the due diligence and get the machine prepped a little bit. If you're doing it out of the area, take the time to get the pictures, gather the history, have that all ready, then attack. That's what I would say. You're probably looking at, if you're not buying local, you're probably looking at, I'd say 3 to 4 machines. All 3 guys are going to want the same info. Gather that up. You have seen all the ads, and I would hope that whoever's trying to sell you the item has more than 5 to 10 pictures.
Right. Yeah.
You can see what pictures they want because that's what they have advertised because that's what your counterparts want. Okay. Just do a little bit of the due diligence and you'll be so surprised how easy it is. With technology in today, I have literally had guys call and 2 days later it's there. I mean, just like you said, they were 85% when they called. We hashed out 2 details. Yep, that'll work. PO done, wire done, on a truck, on his yard.
Yep.
It's that simple.
Yep. And I will say this too, from a guy that spent a lot of time buying and selling equipment off the internet. If the max was 50 and you had 5, I probably didn't even look at your machine just because it had 5 pictures. Because that told me everything I needed to know about that piece of equipment, right? And it could have been the best piece of equipment out there, but there's not enough there for me to even make a remotely close decision.
Whether it's true or not, you're going to think one of 2 things. Either one, that guy really doesn't give a sell it, so I'm not going to mess with it. Or B, it looks good, but there must be more to it because they're hiding something. And used equipment on the dealer side is risk management. We're always going to default to the bad.
Yeah, right. That's true. Because you're buying a piece of equipment, associating dollars to it that you turn around and have to sell to, at a minimum, make your dollars back that you have in that piece of equipment at a minimum, right? That's the goal. So your goal is to make more than that.
We know things by being in the industry and touching it all the time.
Sure. Yeah,
Is your Magnum tractor, does it have copper in the oil?
Yeah. Yep.
Does your 9-liter head gasket leak?
Right. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's
everything from every brand. And it's out there. So we have to be wired the way we are, or it's disaster city.
Right.
And even being wired how we are, it can still be disaster city.
And on both sides of that too. Like we're doing that to obviously cover us on our end, but the other side too is we don't want to go back and sell that piece of equipment to somebody with that stuff wrong with either. So, we want to have repeat customers, and that's the whole part of that, right? So those are the kind of things that at the end of the day, that's why that information is important. That's why the pictures are important. That's why oil scans are important. That's why past shop records are important. Like all these, just transparency about this piece of equipment is you can't give me enough information about a piece of equipment.
Right.
It's impossible, right? There's always going to be one more thing that I wish I had to make that decision. And the same thing goes for the piece of equipment that you're buying from me, right?
Exactly.
I can't give you enough information. You should want to see all the stuff, right? And you should want to see everything there is about work orders. I mean, everything that I want to see, you should want to see the same thing that stuff you're buying from me. And those are the kind of things that are just imperatively important when it comes to the transparency that comes with the machines that you're selling, the machines that you're buying. That's where we're at. All right, good place to stop. Aaron.
2-way street.
Exactly right. Folks want to get some information about your High Plains Wholesale deals of the week. What's the best way to find that?
Well, you can find High Plains Wholesale on Facebook and TikTok. I am also on social media by my name, Aaron Fintel, and I share those same videos on my Facebook and on X. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, or you can call me, text me. A lot of guys do that. Very cool.
Right on. Casey Seymour, find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, X, I think TikTok. I think I'm on all the social media sites, either Moving Iron LLC or Moving Iron Podcast. Check it out there. You can go to AgWeb and listen to this version of the podcast, or you can go to Farm Journal's YouTube channel and you can see the video version of this as well. I had a pretty good podcast this week. I want to thank Greg Machinery Pete Peters for coming on like he does every week. I want to thank Josh Mesker talking about Kelly Tillage. And I want to thank Aaron Phil for being on here, talking what's going on, and Chip Nelliger talking about what's happening in the marketplace. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour. Let's move some iron, folks.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. And remember, Moving Iron is available on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere podcasts are found. So until next time, let's move some iron.